Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. Got a great show for you this Thursday night, March the 2nd. Really super excited. This is going to be the first Coach's Corner of the 2017 season. I've got a great panel waiting here in the wings that I'm going to bring out here in just a second. And then a little bit later on in the broadcast, we're going to be joined by Jon Decker. He is the author of the book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. And he's also a motivational speaker for Celebrate Sports Tour Foundation. So he'll be joining us in the second half of the program. But in the meantime, as I said, we're going to start off with Coach's Corner. I've been really excited about that. And as I said, I've got a great panel coming on here. But let me just remind everybody, of course, we are live every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central or 7 to 9 for those of you on the East Coast here on the blogtalkradio.com network. And the best way to find me is go to blogtalkradio.com. Up in the search key, type Golf Talk Live, and that will take you to the appropriate page. And you can listen to the show live. And if for some reason you can't join us live, not to worry. Just go to that link at blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live and just scroll down to the on-demand section. And you can listen to the recorded version a little bit later when it's convenient for you. So lots of great ways. Also on social media, facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog. Make sure you have blog on the end as the Facebook page for the program, and also my personal page as well. Update and many of the golf groups, of course, on Facebook. Also on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. CEO, of course, in capital letters. You can also follow the show that way as well. But appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. And as I said, I'm very excited. We're starting off with Coach's Corner as we do every year, and it's just been a very successful part of the program and a lot of great lady and gentlemen professionals have joined in on the mix over the last few years. And the first one I'm going to bring on is, of course, Alison Curdt. She's a PGA Master Professional in Instruction and an LPGA Class A Member. She's also TPI Certified and considered to be one of Golf Digest Best Young Instructors in America for both 2016 and 2017. Also, my good friend, Mr. Pete Buchanan. He's the founder and director of instruction and owner of the Plain Simple Golf LLC, which houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. And welcome him back as well. And also rounding out the panel is Monte Scheinblum. He's been a guest before, but I don't think he's ever been on the panel. He's the son of a Major League Baseball player, aspired to follow in his father's footsteps until a major elbow injury and reconstruction at age 15 forced him to give up baseball for golf. He's had some very early success in the game, which led him to UCLA, where he played for the Bruins before turning professional. He's also the 1992 World Long Drive Champion and was runner-up 2 more times as well. He became a full-time professional tournament player with the goal of eventually playing on the PGA Tour, and just made the finals of the Champion Tour Q School, but also teaches all around at many different golf schools around the country. And I think he's visited over 15 cities, so he's really moving around and helping to grow the game. So I'd like to welcome Alison Curdt, Pete Buchanan, and Monte Scheinblum to the Coach's Corner panel here on Golf Talk Live. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thanks, Ted.
All right. I told you it was going to be quick, so I have to read through that, so I apologize. Just to let the folks know, there's many, many other accolades that these guys have to their name, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Here's something I want to talk about tonight, and these are some of the points, both for as instructors, as we all are, but also as students, points that we need to remember regarding good golf lessons. And Alison, I'm going to, as I mentioned off air, I'm going to start with you, and I just want to read something out a little bit first, and then I'm going to ask you, a question, and we'll circulate around through the panel. In all golf lessons, the golf teacher professional must set achievable goals, make progress with the student, and leave the student with a sense of accomplishment. Personable approach is important. Find out about your students, what they want to learn, etc., and be a good listener. The most successful golf teacher professionals are organized, service-oriented, and understand the concept of building clientele. Teaching golf well is an art and can be a very rewarding one, as we've all experienced. True statement, do you think, Alison?
Mostly.
Okay.
I think there's some really, really good pieces in that. And it is a service industry. We work with human beings, and individuals are coming to us for our skill. They're coming to us for our knowledge. They're coming to get help. And so if we're poor in communication and we're poor in building relationships, we're not going to have a business anymore. So I really do believe in that service element. I believe that teaching is an art. There's no exact way to do it. All three of us professionals on the panel might approach a student from three different ways, but they're all going to walk away better. They're just going to get three different types of delivery to them. But the part that I disagree with is the very first component of that statement, and that's that the professional or instructor sets the goals for the student. And the reason why I disagree with that is because in the student-centered approach, I mean, the student is the expert in this relationship when it comes to them. They know themselves better than we do. They know what they're feeling. They know what they're capable of. We may help encourage them. We may see a different sort of perspective when it comes to potential. But I really think that the student needs to come up with goals, and then in a collaborative relationship, the teacher can help guide, modify, reframe so that they're realistic but also challenging. So I don't think it's quite so solely on the instructor. I think it should be a cooperative relationship.
Yeah, let me just interject real quick. I agree with you. I think you're exactly right. I think the students need to have some goals in mind. I think really what that statement is trying to say, and I agree with it to a certain point as well, is I think that sometimes the students will come with a goal in mind that's just not necessarily achievable or realistic early on, especially for beginners. Now, obviously, more seasoned players and things like that, that may be a different issue. But I think sometimes, especially for the beginning golfers, I think is what the message is trying to get at is more along the lines what you just said, Alison, and that is it sort of has to be a collaborative experience and not just one side or the other. The coach can't just sort of impose their will on the student and say, well, this is what we're going to do or how we're going to do it. And here's what we're going to get the results. So I understand, and I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I think it has to be collaborative, but I think also I think that sometimes the coach or teacher professional has to sometimes keep the student a little bit grounded, I guess is the word I'm looking at, because there are a lot of times, and I think we've all experienced this. Pete, I'm going to go to you next. Your thoughts on that overall statement. If I need to read any part of it again, I can. But that particular first part, do you agree with that statement in general, or do you lean more towards what Alison was just mentioning?
Well, I agree with what she said, especially in the beginning. The first thing I always try to do is to find out, as you know, what their goals are. What are they trying to achieve, and what do they want to achieve? And a lot of times I'll ask them, if you could go forward 12 months and you did everything you wanted to do, as you look back, what happened? So what did you see? And through that progress, how much did you practice? How much did you play? And so I'm trying to get them to look forward to see what it's going to take to be able to get to the goals that they want to achieve. But the other thing on that too, and it goes back with the lesson overall itself, and I had a great conversation with another fellow professional today on this very thing, and it's you have to work with the students, not against them. And times that, you know, there are certain things that they're doing, and if you make a change that makes them uncomfortable, they're going to work against you. So you have to understand not only the student themselves, but you also have to understand in the lesson which way you're going to go so that it best suits what they need and also keeps them comfortable and also makes it a great working environment. So, you know, I've seen somewhere, you know, you might have had a better chance in the ring with Tyson than what you tried to do there because it's totally uncomfortable and the student didn't like it and they were panicking. And once they start to panic, you've lost them. They're just not going to listen to you. They'll hear you, but they won't listen to you. So I think you have to create an environment that allows you to work with them, work toward correct instead of fighting incorrects all the time.
Right, I agree. Monte, what about your thoughts? Would maybe a better way to phrase this is the teacher professional or coach should help set some achievable goals, more leaning again to what Alison and Pete have just sort of reiterated, and also to an art that I think sometimes is lost in humanity altogether, not just in teaching professionals, is being a good listener. I think sometimes we don't always listen to our students maybe as well as we should, and certainly not in every case, but from time to time I think it happens to even the best of us. Do you agree a little bit more with that adjustment to the statement?
You know, I think it's always got to be a really individual approach. Just to give an example that just happened to me just a few weeks ago, a guy literally came to my lesson tee, and I asked him first thing, you know, how you doing, you know, whatever, pleasantries. And I said, okay, what do you want to accomplish? What are your goals? Almost identical to this discussion. And he very, very sincerely and succinctly said, I want to swing like Adam Scott. Right. And I was a bit taken aback, and I had to kind of, scramble for an answer to that. And, 15 minutes later, he hadn't even hit a ball yet. And we kind of, reeled him in a little bit, so to speak. And, going back to what was said before, it's a collaborative effort. Sometimes you have to say, wait a second, maybe that's, and then the flip side has happened. I've had people come to me that, they are very down on themselves and they're much better golfers than they know. And it's just they've been kind of mentally been beaten down for a year or so of some bad golf and don't understand their full potential. So you can see there's two extremes there that I just described. And it's really a case-by-case basis on how you have to handle, each individual.
Yeah, I agree. And Alison, I agree 100% with what you said. I think that it shouldn't necessarily be – I think that the instructor needs to be a guide, if you will, especially for those early beginning students that really don't understand golf very much. And this goes into my next question. Pete, I'm going to go to you first this time, and that is to be brief, keeping the information simple and direct, which I know is going to be right in your wheelhouse, direct as possible. And really using words that the students can understand. And the reason why I meant that is obviously a lot of people, through social media and the Golf Channel and other avenues, hear all of this golf lingo that floats around, but really a lot of them don't understand what some of the terminology necessarily means. So is it important that we keep it as simple as possible as we can to help educate the students or players that we're working with to make their experience a little bit more fulfilling, as opposed to just hitting with a bunch of technical jargon that is going to have their head spinning for the next week? Your thoughts on that, Pete?
Well, you picked the right guy for that question, considering it's plain simple golf. No, I always try to keep it simple. And, I found over the years, the longer that I've taught, the less I say. And so I'm very keen on not saying a whole lot and listening quite a bit, and allowing them to actually do the things I'm asking them to do, because I found if we talk too much or use too many terms they don't understand, they'll just let us do all the thinking for them, and they're not going to learn anything. So I always try to keep it very brief, very much to the point, and I have a process that I go through, but I don't say a whole lot. Even with tournament players, I don't say a whole lot, and I just try to keep it very, very simple and to the point, and only relative to the things that we need to work on at that time. And then I always like to, at the end, if they have any questions, I'll let them go. If they have anything they don't understand, things they might have heard that, you've been listening to somebody say something you not quite understand what it is, and I'll be happy to answer those. But while we're working, I try to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues that a lot of folks fall into in that area is they don't want to appear stupid. And this is something, too, that I think the teacher professional really has to be cognizant of when they're explaining some of the information, is that, again, if we're going over the student's head, and they're not understanding it, we have to be cognizant of that, because often what will happen is the student, again, not wanting to look foolish or as though they don't understand, won't necessarily come back and say, well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. They can be a little bit apprehensive. So that's something that we have to be mindful of as well. Monte, I want to ask you something a little bit different on this one. I'm going to try so that we're not getting too repetitive here, guys. Show rather than tell at every opportunity during a golf lesson. Some people believe that it's better that the teaching professional or coach gets in there and physically shows them. Others say that no, they should stand back more and let the student do more of the hitting and so forth. What's your thoughts on that?
This has been my experience. Is I have the same repetitive thing over and over again. It's very individual to the person, but I would rather them do it. But there's kind of a phenomenon that if you can demonstrate the wrong way that they're doing it and produce the poor shot that they produce with the quote unquote wrong way, and then you can show them, see if you make this little change and then you produce a good shot, that will instill confidence in them that, yes, he understands why I'm hitting a bad shot. And look, he just made this one small change to what I do, and he hit a good shot. So it kind of gives them, an idea that, okay, this person does know what they're talking about, and they see firsthand what that small change can produce. So, again, some people don't always need that, but a lot of people gain confidence in what they're hearing if they see it demonstrated properly. Right.
Alison, I wanted to get your thought on this, because I know that just from the earlier discussion, I know that sometimes having the students not see necessarily a negative, and I'm going to have another question I'm going to ask you in a minute, but sort of reinforcing a negative is not always the best route. What's your thought on what Monte just said? Do you agree with that approach? And I know we're all different, but what are your thoughts on that approach?
I think Monte's approach is definitely going to be effective when the student can see what their motion is doing to the golf ball. I would argue that that's going to work really well for one type of student, a visual learner.
Right.
We've got three types of learners. We've got visual learners, kinesthetic learners, and auditory learners. And so if you're using a learning style in terms of how you're delivering your message, and that doesn't match with your student, you're going to miss the mark. So if someone's a visual teacher and I just keep verbalizing what I want them to do, we're going to be on different wavelengths, and they're really not going to learn as effectively. Now, there are people that have, all three different types of learning styles, and they're pretty strong in all of them. That's a great student. It's an easy student to work with. He's got multiple disciplines there. But you'll find that some students are really, really heavily dominated in one particular learning style. And so if you can discover that, let's say through the interview process, then you can customize the lesson and your teaching style to meet their learning preference. And so I think Monte's version is fantastic for a visual learner. And then even for a kinesthetic learner, if he can kind of manipulate the body in a way to have them feel what the incorrect motion is compared to the correct motion. And when they discover the correct motion on their own, then sort of supporting that discovery with what does it feel like and how are we going to remember that a couple of weeks from now.
Right.
And it goes back.
Go ahead,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that is what she just said is an excellent point. The first thing that I try to do when someone comes the first time is figure out how the learning process works. I think that is an excellent, excellent point that she just made. Everybody learns differently, and if you don't figure out how that person learns, and you said, Ted, you said this earlier, if you don't figure out how that person learns, you're not going to go anywhere with them, no matter how good the information is. That's a really, really good point.
Yeah, and I think that this is where, as golf professionals, I think beginning, especially with the newer students, and occasionally even revisiting this, but going through an assessment process right from the get-go to uncover these areas of learning, what the student is best equipped for. Are they a visual learner, kinesthetic, or auditory, as Alison had just pointed out? is vital. And I think a lot of instructors that aren't doing that do themselves a disservice, but also do the student a disservice because they're not really engaging up front and adapting their lesson plan to that particular student's way of dealing with things. And I think quite often this is why we see frustration. Alison, I want to, as I mentioned, I had another question, and this sort of, again, rolls into in your wheelhouse, if you will. We obviously all have some fear of failure in our wheelhouse, some more than others, of course. But by reinforce and paying too much attention to the mistakes can be detrimental to a student's learning abilities. So, and as somebody pointed out earlier, most people become very discouraged and less receptive to learning if the lesson becomes a list of things they should not be doing. So, how do we go about handling that? Obviously, we want to be able to praise the students on their successes, but we also have to be realistic too, do we not, Alison, on and showing them some of the areas that they're not doing as well. How do we find that balance?
It's a really great question, and I'm glad you asked me that because it's certainly in my wheelhouse. As a practicing licensed psychotherapist, a lot of my training has been in behavioral reinforcement. So if you're working with any sort of behavior of an individual, what behaviors do you reinforce to get your elicited response, and what behaviors do you want to ignore or consequence, if you will, to diminish them? And so when we're working with players, I think we have to take in mind their self-esteem and their ego and their emotions, that every word that we say when we're either praising or providing feedback has to be carefully timed and carefully worded so that the student either doesn't take offense, but they're also getting the message clearly about what they need to do right. So I think when you provide feedback, it has to be very specific. And oftentimes in coaching, I find that there is an emphasis on the pieces that an athlete is doing incorrectly. So, okay, that move was more over the top. Nope, that wasn't the right move. We need to get it more here. And so it's more focusing on what not to do instead of, hey, that was a better move and progressing towards an in-to-out swing. We're getting really close. And so I think we need to emphasize and focus more on the good and what a student is doing. And research actually supports that statement, that athletes will improve quicker for the longevity of their development if we focus more on praising and reinforcing correct motions. And when they make an incorrect motion, we don't need to comment about that. We can reframe our verbiage to say we're moving closer. Let's continue to make progress on this, quote unquote, in-out swing, whatever that might be.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And actually, I have a gentleman that I've been working with here for a little over a month now that falls right into this wheelhouse of thinking. And this is what I do as well, as what you just pointed out. Obviously, he has a lot of great things about his golf swing and his setup and so on and so forth. And I always make a point every session that we get together of emphasizing and pointing those good features out and those good qualities. And when he does make an error, it's minimized. But I do point it out, but not in a big long drawn out thing. I will show him, but I'll then show him with a modification to that how he can get back in. But again, re-emphasizing it and sort of pumping up the good things about his swing or his setup or so forth, because I want him to come away with a positive image or a positive impression and not just talk about the negative things that may be going on there. Great point, Alison. Thank you. Pete, just something Monte, I want to go to you next. I apologize. When working on a drill or exercise, this kind of falls into what we were just talking about as well. Immediately relate it to the part of the swing that it was intended for. Is that a good idea, or what should we do when it comes to using specific drills or exercises? How do we tie those together for the students as well?
I think the biggest mistake that's made with drills and training aids and things like that is people will go to the range and overuse them, and drill X, and they'll go to the range and do drill X for half an hour, and then they can't hit a golf ball without it.
Right.
And that to me, that's the biggest mistake that golfers make is whenever they're doing something, it's directing at a better movement. That's what a drill is for. You're trying to redirect a better movement, and the only way to get that to work is to go back and forth. 3 with the drill, 5 regular. 4 drill, 3 regular, and go back and forth. So there's kind of a transition process. Because if you just keep, I saw a guy the other day, he had a training aid, and it's actually a fairly good one. It keeps you from bending the trail elbow past 90 degrees. And I watched him on the other side of the range hit balls for 2 straight hours with this thing on. And when he took it off, he couldn't get the ball in the air. And I think that's fairly typical among golfers, and we need to direct people away from that.
Right. Now, Pete, I want to bring you in because you are a proponent of a specific training aid that you have, and do you agree with what Monte's assessment is, or what's your take on that?
Well, I do agree that you shouldn't be doing it too long. I mean,
right.
Once you start to do some, I call them sets and drills. I mean, once you start to do those, and I don't have very many of them in the process of learning what's going on, but once you get to where you can do those, you don't need to do 10,000 of them. I mean, that's just way too many. There's a certain limit on how many you should do, but I think they are important in the building process for what you're trying to get to, done properly. And as far as training aids go, I mean, it's the same thing. If they're used properly, then they are a great advantage to getting what you need to get done. Mine was built specifically for what I'm after in a certain part of the golf swing, and so it's used specifically for that. And it's, I found it extremely beneficial. But again, as we were talking about, it's not overdone. It's done in the right amount of time and in the right amount of practice to make it efficient.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Alison, I want to ask you this question if I can. Obviously, every golf lesson can be used as a learning experience for both teacher and student. What should the student be looking for out of a golf lesson, and what should the teacher be looking for in a golf lesson?
Ooh, I like that question, Ted. Well, the student should be
I knew you would.
Should be looking for, their students should be looking for their goals being met. And so when a student comes to a lesson, I would hope that every instructor is having a dialogue with their student to figure out what they want. I mean, we don't go into a doctor's office and just have the doctor examine us. We tell them what the condition is, what we're looking for, what we have questions about. And so students come to us as swing experts and mental coach experts and golf experts, and they're coming with a conflict or an issue or something that they want to learn and improve. And so they should be able to walk away after that time, if they're paying you for a service, with their questions answered and have a better knowledge of their golf swing. And I think the golf instructor needs to ask themselves, did I do the best job possible to provide what my student needed? And so if the student's coming in with a request to improve their golf swing and they want to hit the golf ball longer and they walk away hitting it shorter, then the instructor needs to reevaluate their method. So I think that the instructor needs to provide what the student is asking, and the student should be walking away with what they're requesting. Right.
Well said. Monte, what about your thoughts on that same question as far as a takeaway? What do you want your students to take away from the lessons that you're giving them, and what do you hope to take away once you're finished that particular lesson?
It's funny. I'll answer the second part first. I often say this, that I learn more from my students than they learn from me, and that sounds like a cop-out cliche to make me, it's whatever. But the more lessons you give, the more you understand the learning process, and that's what I get out of this. I get better at understanding how people learn information. So, the toughest lessons are the ones that I learn the most from. And to answer the first part, I think people are a little bit this is obviously a gross generalization, but people are a little bit too involved with making their golf swing perfect rather than making it easier and the game more fun to play. And if somebody leaves one of my lessons and says, you know, this is a lot easier than I thought it would be, I know I've done my job.
Well said. You're exactly right. Pete, I want to ask you a little bit different question. I'm going to make a statement, and then I want you to answer whether you agree with that statement or not, and if yes or no, your reasons why. If someone is, or in this case, obviously, if a student is not learning, then someone is not teaching golf. True statement? If so, why? If not, why?
Well, I think it is a true statement because, you know, that's what they're there to do. They're there to learn, and you should be able to take that upon yourself to get them to learn something. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, we're teachers to the core, and the thing is for us to be able to get them to learn and understand not only what they want to achieve, but, you know, what we're bringing to the table to help them to achieve that. So, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. You know, one of the big advantages I had, you know, spending, you know, more than 16 years with the John Jacobs schools is you get to see a ton of people. And so you get to see all those different learning styles, and, you know, you have to make quick work of what you're doing. And I agree with that. I think, you know, you should be able to get them to learn. That's what they're there for. And, you know, not always does it have to be, 100%, you know, because sometimes there's some things that they may be asking you that are going to take a little bit of time. But I think in every lesson that you give, that should be a great learning environment. To me, that's what it's all about.
I would agree with that. On the other hand, Alison, I'm going to ask you this question a little bit differently. In a perfect world, I would agree exactly what you just said, Pete, but we've all had experiences perhaps where we're now working with a student, or a student has come into our facility that has maybe had some bad experiences previously with a teacher professional or coach. So right away, they're very guarded, they're very closed-minded, and are not receptive to learning. So how do we decipher that? Is there ways that we can sort of, without, you know, getting into a he said, she said battle, how do we combat somebody with that type of approach, that, you know, they've come in there, they've maybe expressed that they've taken lessons before, and you can tell just by their whether their body language or their mannerisms that they're not receptive. Does that same phrase apply in your mind, or is there something different?
You know, it's a difficult situation. When you've got a resistant student, it's difficult. I think when you ask them what they want, the instructor needs to hear that and to do everything possible to provide fulfilling what they want, provided that it's realistic. And a quote that's been told to me that I've sort of really embraced in my teaching and my business is, it's less about what I say and it's more about how I make the student feel. And so really the content on some level is going to get lost, but the student is really going to remember how I made them feel in that lesson. And so with a resistant student who may not be receptive to learning, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, really get them on my side to work with them collaboratively and make them feel good about what they're doing, whether that's hitting the golf ball better, whether that's furthering their understanding of their own game, whether that's helping them discover something new about themselves. It's going to be making sure that they walk away feeling better about themselves, and they might be more attracted to further instruction after that.
Yeah, I think it falls into, it's very, you know, golf is very similar in a lot of ways to sales. And let me just draw the comparison. I don't mean just selling golf lessons or selling equipment, but how you approach individuals. In a sales call, of course, sometimes things go great. Somebody comes in, they're excited about the product or service that you have to offer, and it's an easy close. But then there's others that you're meeting with objections or objectives pertaining to whatever service or product that you're providing. So you need to be able to handle those objections with a certain amount of skill, and as you just sort of pointed out, Alison, sort of flip things around and get them in a different way of thinking and not just sort of combative or in a negative mindset. So I think that would maybe be a good way to approach it as well. Monte, I want to ask you this question if I can, and obviously the others, Pete and Alison, you can certainly jump in when Monte's finished. Enthusiasm is contagious. Again, this is a statement, so we want to let ours show. We talked a little bit about having being positive and making a golf lesson more rewarding for both the teacher and student, and be fun with it. One of the things that I would say I would criticize, and this goes to everything, not just in golf, Monte, is the last thing a student needs to be seeing is you looking at your watch, with a little bit of antsiness or anticipation for your next lesson or so forth. How important is that to make sure that we're showing enthusiasm with their lesson and not just look like we're waiting for the next one or we're in a rush to sort of get this lesson over? How important is that?
It's really funny you say that because I take notes during all my lessons. So, after, maybe midway through the lesson, I'll have my phone out and I'll be typing some stuff into my phone about some of the stuff we worked on. So if the student calls me or sends me an email, I'll be able to refer back to my notes. And also, I can measure progress. And when I first started doing this, maybe the third or fourth lesson, someone said, "Oh, you playing Angry Birds back there during my lesson?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm taking notes." And so I've made it a point that whenever, I sit down to do that, I say, just so you know, these are notes on your lesson and I'm not, playing a video game back here. So that as a sideline, I agree with you 100%. If they notice your clock watching or, I've seen it firsthand in front of me with somebody else, that's not going to send a very good message. And a lot of the lessons I give are people come in from out of town and I'm with them, 4 or 5 hours in a row. And maintaining that enthusiasm and interest in what they're doing, can be difficult at times, but, that's your job. Your job is to be fully vested in whatever this person needs, whether it's, to have a sounding board about how frustrated they are about their game or, wanting a lot of people will, we talked about the technical discussions before. They'll hear
right.
all of these buzzwords and they want to know what they mean, if nothing else, and they can say, "Oh, well, that doesn't apply to me, so I can throw that out." So to answer, to sum up, yes, you need to be fully vested in what you're doing the whole time you're in front of that person. Right.
Alison, what about your take on that? Obviously, we want to look like we're enjoying ourselves as, with the students, and they need to see our enthusiasm. And if we're looking, downrange, or we're looking, sort of a roundabout and not really focusing on the task at hand, just as Monte pointed out, students are going to pick up on that. Some may not, but a good many of them are going to pick up on that, and that sends a negative message as well. So how do we sort of juggle that angle as well? Being enthusiastic on the lesson, being patient, of course, but being tentative to that particular student's needs, while at the same time, drawing information, as Monte pointed out, and gathering that information so we can better service and help our clients. How do we find a balance there?
Well, I really like Monte's response. I'm totally on board, and I'm sure Pete agrees too. You have to be super invested in your student. They will feel it. They know when you're not paying attention. And I think that when we're really invested with our student, that enthusiasm comes out naturally. And I don't find that it's hard work to be enthusiastic because I really, really like what I do. And that comes across as passion, and it certainly is contagious. We do have to monitor what we're doing with our watch and what we're doing with our phone. And I personally don't take notes during the lesson. I use an iPad that videos my students playing, and I never have my cell phone out. The only time that I'm pulling my cell phone out is if I'm scheduling a lesson. I think taking notes during the lesson is great. It's very time efficient, and you can certainly send that to the student very quickly. But I like how Monte started to learn how I'm going to tell you what I'm doing so that you don't get that impression that, I'm not paying attention or I'm not with you. But I really think that when you form a connection with the student, number one, time flies. You're having fun.
Yes.
You're in the moment. You're not focusing about what you're going to have for lunch or when's this lesson going to be over. It makes it really easy, and the enthusiasm comes out naturally. And so the advice that I'd give to coaches is if you struggle with that, it's to really just be mindful, to be in the moment with the student and to empathize with what they're experiencing, to put yourself in their shoes for just one moment to see how frustrated they might feel hitting a golf ball and how joyous they might feel when they finally connect with that golf ball.
Right. Well said. Pete, if a student is smiling, you're making progress along this theme that we're just talking about. Would that be an accurate statement? And what are your thoughts about being enthusiastic during lessons?
Well, you can talk to a lot of my students. We have a great time. We have a lot of fun. I want to make the lessons, as much of a learning environment as possible, but I have fun with them. And I make sure they're having a good time. And sometimes a smile can be, there are some smiles when they look at you, it's like, yeah, they're smiling, but it's not one of those smiles that's totally enjoyable. But no, I mean,
right.
I agree with them wholeheartedly, both with what they're saying. It's, you have to have a good atmosphere, you have to have a good environment, and it's only conducive to the learning that they're going to get. And I've always tried to make it a lot of fun, and to make it so that they understand. And, one of the things I do, I mean, I do take some video, I do use my phone, but it's towards the end of every lesson, because I use Edify, I will bring them back and I will put the notes into their space so that they understand them. I want them to see the notes we're putting in there, and I want them to understand what they mean, so that when they go to look back at them, they know what I was talking about. So in that particular case, I agree with Monte. I make sure they know what I'm doing. But
right.
The other time, I would only use that for video or showing them back a video if I'm doing that. But as far as notes go, I like to have them finish up understanding what we worked on, and then get the notes in there so that they understand that moving forward.
It reminds me. Well said, Pete. It reminds me of a sort of an interesting thing that happened to me some years ago, probably about 25 or so years ago. I used to go to a local range, and, just when I would work on my own game. And, I was I shouldn't say was, I still am a pretty good ball striker, but I was obviously much better in my younger days. But there just happened to be a gentleman there that was always giving lessons, and I didn't work at this facility, but I just went up there to practice. And I can remember, this is going back to, when everybody had the handheld camcorders. Now everybody's got their iPad or iPhone or what have you, recording video. And 9 times out of 10, he'd be looking down at me while giving his lesson and recording my swing, as opposed to focusing on a student. And as God is my witness, one time during a lesson, the student actually stopped him midstream because he realized what he was doing and came down and asked me if I wouldn't mind joining the lesson, because he was cognizant of the fact that his instructor wasn't paying attention to him and was paying attention to me. Now, I knew the instructor very well, and of course I went down and bailed him out. But, this goes to what I was trying to get at is, we have to be cognizant of what our students are doing, and paying attention and not looking downrange or not looking, around as though we're disinterested, because from time to time they're going to, now that's obviously an extreme case, but they're going to pick up on that. So I want to ask you something else. And Alison, I'm going to go back to you here and start through the panel that way. Some do this very successfully, others don't. And obviously I'm going to preface this a little bit. Using humor in teaching golf, is that an okay thing to do, provided we're not getting into some off-color jokes? What's your thought on that? Where do you draw the line with using humor, or is that something left to the comedians like Jerry Seinfeld or somebody like that? What are your thoughts on bringing humor into a golf lesson?
Well, I think humor needs to come naturally. I mean, if it's forced, it's certainly a little bit awkward, and it's hard to really know what a student's level of humor is if they're new to you. If you have a really good rapport with them and you've worked with them for a while, you might start to pick up a little bit on their nuances. But I think in order for humor to be effective, both people need to be laughing. And so if you're making a joke and you're not getting the reception that you're looking for, the student may not just be in that state of mind where humor is something that they're looking for. They might be really focused on their swing. They might be experiencing some different emotions. So I think an instructor needs to tread lightly when using humor, obviously taking social hot topics off the table, politics, money, things like that. But to be lighthearted, I would say might be a different word to use, where I think being lighthearted is being fun, being friendly, being relaxed. And that might be a better way to go than trying to create a joke. And certainly if the humor is derogatory at all, that's going to affect the student's esteem.
Right. And as I said, if it's an off-color joke, or something that somebody, I mean, again, we all, and not to jump on the politically correct bandwagon, but we also have to be careful because what might seem funny to you might not seem funny to somebody else. And as you pointed out, Alison, you don't want to get into certain hot buttons, if you will, that we see in the media or what have you, and bring that into your lesson, because a lesson can go bad real quick. If you happen to offend somebody. But Pete, what about a great icebreaker? I mean, again, even if you're the brunt of the joke, is that a good idea, do you think, to help sort of ease, especially with newer students that maybe are a little tense or uncomfortable, finding something humorous in yourself maybe that you want to bring out that, again, that's not going to be taken the wrong way?
Well, I think you can certainly do that. I mean, I agree with Alison that you need to be lighthearted. I mean, you can be funny, but be lighthearted, and you don't necessarily have to tell jokes to have some things that are funny and fun. I always try to get when I first get them there. The thing that I always like to do first, I ask them how their day's going, how's their family, how are their kids, if they have kids, so how's the job going. So I always try to talk and ask them how they are doing first, and that sort of gives me an idea of where they're coming from and what kind of mood they're in and how their week's been and things that are going on. And then it lets me, direct that in a direction that, I can slowly be a little bit more lighthearted, as we move along, or, they want to be serious right now. But I always try to get a little bit into what they're about and what's going on in their life as we start off, and just to see how they're doing. And that, to me, is how I break the ice. I want to find out how they're doing. And then from there I say, oh, well, what about your golf game? Should we talk about that? And so, I always like to get a good feel for them at the start, regardless of keeping golf out of it, and just see, what's going on with your life and where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And again, humor can certainly be brought in, but you've got to be very, very careful. And Monte, I think, maybe a way that I would maybe approach things a little bit differently to engage in some lighthearted conversation, as opposed to just jumping right in. Now, obviously, a student you've been working with for a little while, they may want to, because of time restrictions, they may want to, dive right into that lesson. But for a new student, I think it's good to break the ice, maybe ask them a little bit about them personally without, again, getting too personal, but to get them open up and conversing in that. A good idea maybe to approach things a little bit differently, as opposed to throwing some slapstick humor in the golf lesson?
Again, got rapport with a regular, and slapstick humor is part of why they enjoy coming there, to get away from the seriousness of life. That's great, and I have that rapport with a lot of students. Again, the same concept comes up over and over again. You have to be able to read the individual and connect with them on a personal level. Some people you're going to need to be very, very serious and straightforward with. Some people you need to kind of, be a little self-deprecating to kind of break the ice. And some people you can just, they show up and they're the ones telling the off-color jokes, and then you offer one back at them because that's the relationship you have with that person. It's all about relationships and connecting with a person on a personal level and knowing who your audience is. If you've got a guy who, isn't too serious about himself and just wants to come and learn a little bit about his swing, and you're super, super serious, he's not going to come back. And then, as already has been discussed, if you tell an off-color joke to someone who's pretty serious and not into that, they're not going to come back. So it's
right.
Just like you have to be individual with the learning process of the student, you have to be individual with connecting with that person. Whether it's how you direct the humor, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it goes back to what we all discussed in the very beginning of the show, and that is really understanding the students, helping them, working with them to help set their goals, and it also goes back to doing an assessment of the student, understanding the student's learning style, how we can best tailor-make lessons around that. And getting a feel for them as a human being, as opposed to just running through the numbers and saying, okay, well, here's another student, and this is lesson number 3, and going through. So I think a better understanding of the individual that you're dealing with can help open that door a little bit too, as you pointed out, Monte. I mean, if you've been working with a student for a little while and you know their personality and you know what's sort of off limits and what's not, then you can have a little bit of fun perhaps. But students, when you're first working with them, you've got to be a little bit careful. And I think just getting them to open up and engage about themselves. People like to talk about themselves. What are their interests outside of golf? Sometimes is a good icebreaker as well. Guys, great answers tonight. There was, believe it or not, a theme of tonight, and that was really just to sort of open the door for the season, if you will, to both the golf professionals out there that are listening to the show and for the students. That it's not just about giving golf lessons. It's about building relationships as well that can be lifelong in many cases. Sometimes students want just that quick fix, and that's okay too, but others want to develop a relationship much like they would in other areas of their life, in their business life and so forth. So this is some great opportunities that we have, and as I promised to all of you, I'm going to give you an opportunity to share with the audience how they can reach out to you and maybe get more information, and perhaps if they're in your area, can seek your expert counsel, if you will, out in the golf course. So Alison, ladies first, I'm going to go with you. How can the folks that are tuning in learn more about you? Where can they go to get that information?
They can go to my website, AlisonCurtGolf.com, and that's sort of the hub of my business, where you can get onto Facebook and see some content and tips. You can access some videos that'll bring you to my YouTube site. You can go to Twitter as well. And there's also a link to my mental coaching site. So for anyone who's interested in mental coaching, you'll be able to see the new website for Curdt Performance Therapy. So when you want to take your physical game to the next level and start working on your mental game, that would be the website to head to.
Perfect. Thank you, as always, Alison. Pete, next up.
They can get a hold of me at my website. It's plainsimplegolf.com. That's PLANE, plainsimplegolf.com, and all the contact information and a lot of the different areas of instruction that are out there. I do quite a bit of my instruction online, and so I work with players all over the world. And so those that are listening from other areas can check out some of the online things that I do and how all that works. And that's how they can find me.
Perfect. And Monte, what about yourself? What would you like to share with the audience?
My website is MonteScheinblum.com, and my YouTube channel is Hit It Long. And I got a couple of golf schools coming up in San Jose and Phoenix, if anybody is in those areas. And that's where you can find out about what I'm doing.
Now, the golf schools, just very quickly, they can learn more about that through your website as well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, listen, guys, as always, I appreciate, as I said at the beginning, I appreciate you giving of your time. And I know you've all want to kick back and relax or have other things that you need to do to spend for the rest of your evening. But on that note, thank you very much for joining me on Coach's Corner tonight. And I look forward to having you guys back on future shows as well. So, again, on behalf of myself, thank you very much, Alison Curdt, Pete Buchanan, and Monte Scheinblum for joining me on the first Coach's Corner panel discussion of 2017. thanks, everybody, and have a great week, and I look forward to having you back again soon.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. That was my very special inauguration of Coach's Corner panel for 2017. And they did a great job. It was a little bit light conversation, nothing too in-depth tonight, and I want to do that specifically to sort of ease everybody in. Although many of us, myself included, live in more warmer climates throughout the year, I wanted to give them an opportunity to sort of do a spring thaw, if you will, as everybody gets ready in the Northeast and other parts of the globe that maybe are a little cooler and haven't started getting out and playing golf yet. So a little light conversation earlier this show. And I'm going to be joined by my very special guest, Jon Decker, here in just a moment. But I want to just remind everybody that for those of you that tuned into the show a few weeks ago, you'll recall one of my very good friends, Jamie Leno-Zimron, who's a great teacher professional herself, and a couple of others, Connie Charles and Dave Bisbee, were on from IMAP Golf. Well, they wanted me to let the folks know that we're tuning into the show that they have a special offer. We were talking about their online questionnaire, which, of course, helps through, as we were talking about tonight, through an assessment process. And you're able to do this online. So here's the deal. And they've worked out a very special deal for my listeners. And if you go to www.imapgolf.com, that's imapgolf.com, and you sign up and use the promo code GolfTalk, that's in capital letters, then you'll receive the IMAP My Golf Game questionnaire online for just $9.95, and this will, of course, help you sort of do an online assessment and better understand how you can do things. So go to imapgolf.com and type in Golf Talk in the promo code section, and for $9.95 you can do their IMAP online questionnaire. So go to imapgolf.com. As I mentioned, I've got another very special guest joining me here this evening, and I'll do a quick introduction, and I will bring him on board so we can have a discussion about a great book that he has written. He is the author of this book. It's called Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. He's also a motivational speaker for Celebrate Sports Tour Foundation. And here's just a few other things as well that you need to know about him. He is also been a golf instructor. And I'm going to tell you here in just a moment, and I lost my page, so bear with me. I apologize. He was the director of instruction for the New Albany Country Club in New Albany, Ohio for 10 years. He was also the head instructor for the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf in Orlando, Florida for 20 years. He was also the 2015 Southern Ohio Teacher of the Year and has taught numerous players both on the PGA, LPGA Tours, Web.com Tour, and many of the other mini tours. He's also taught at the PGA Championship for 4 years, as well as at the Women's U.S. Open in 2007, played on some of the Florida mini tours, and graduated in 1990 from the East Carolina University. And as I mentioned, he is the author of the book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. We're going to talk about that here tonight on Golf Talk Live. So let me welcome my very special guest tonight, Jon Decker.
Ted, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. First off, thank you for sending me a copy of the book, and I appreciate that. And it's been so far a very interesting read. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the book in as much detail as you like. We got some time here tonight, so.
Sure.
But let me just get you to sort of I just sort of paraphrased, I guess, some of the general information about you, but maybe you can get into a little bit more specifics about how you actually got into golf. Give us a little bit more on the backstory, if you wouldn't mind.
I'd love to. And thanks, Ted, for having me on your show. When I was a kid, my dream was to be a PGA Tour player. I love the game. I first got exposed to the game through my father, and I talk about this in the book. But I just loved playing the game. Jack Nicklaus was my idol. And when I went to the Masters in 1980, I went to the practice round. And when I was there, that's when the dream really took hold in my heart. And I said, I want to be a PGA Tour player. And so my journey led me to East Carolina, and then after college, I kind of floundered a little bit. Really didn't know what I wanted to do. I really did not want to be a club professional per se, where I was just working in a pro shop. That really didn't interest me. And I went down to Orlando and just happened to fall in. One of my friends, Rich Thurston, actually led me to the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf. And the first time the very first day, I stood there on the tee and I watched those teachers out there teaching. I said, this is what I want to do with my life. And I just absolutely fell in love with teaching. And that's really how it all started. And so it's just been a great journey. From there, I spent 20 years in Florida, and then from there I went to Ohio, and had a great experience there in Ohio for 10 years. And now I've written a book, and I'm trying to promote the book and doing a lot of public speaking and really enjoying it.
What I found really interesting about this book, right from the get-go in the introduction, you talk about really, and we're going to get into a little more of that obviously as we continue on the discussion, but I want you to explain really how this book came about. Obviously, you talk very candidly about your spiritual journey through life. Obviously, you were a regular churchgoer, if you will, at a very young age, attended obviously church very regularly, Bible camp and so forth, as many have before. But there was something that was a little bit more, I guess, profound that really changed the way you perceive your spiritual side of things. And we're going to talk about that and how it relates to the book. But just explain maybe a little bit, if you don't mind, that sort of profound experience that you had earlier in your life.
You're talking about the dream I had?
Yes.
I'm assuming, yes. When I was in high school, I was a sophomore in high school. I had bronchitis. I was extremely sick. I went to bed, and it's one of those. It's almost like you just dread going to bed because you're so sick that you just you're not going to sleep. You're going to be up all night, and I was just it was a horrible experience. And in the early morning hours, I started hearing. I heard angels. I heard angels singing, and I didn't know what was going on. They were singing in different languages. I could pick up hints of French and Spanish and all these different languages, but I didn't know what they were singing, but it was beautiful. It was just absolutely beautiful. And then I heard in the distance this rumbling, and it was almost like if you're standing in a field and in the mountains you can hear rumbling of thunder. I heard Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I could hear just and I still at this point was very confused, but I heard, right. I am the Alpha, I am the Omega, I'm the beginning, I'm the end. And it sounded like thunder going off. And I knew it was God. I knew God was speaking to me. And this entire dream was in black and white. And so from there, I started seeing pictures of family members who had died that I knew. I would yell their names, but they would just go by me. And the pictures were going by me very fast. And I saw pictures of a lot of people who I did not know. And through this, again, it's all in black and white. As I start getting more into the people going by, I heard the audible voice of one of the angels saying to me, "This light was sent to you by," and I didn't understand what they meant by light. And the dream immediately turned from black and white to color. And I saw the most beautiful light I've ever seen in my life came shooting down at me. And I knew who it was. I knew it was Jesus. I raised my hands in the air. I was crying. And I asked Jesus, I said, "Please take me." And he said, "It's not your time. You have much work to do." And again, I'm a sophomore in high school. I don't know really how to take that. I mean, what am I going to do with this? I felt my soul come out of my body, and it, for a few seconds, went back into my body, and I was immediately healed. I woke up. There was nothing wrong with me. I went running up the steps. I told my parents, and from there I went to the very next day. I went straight to my church. I went and talked to my pastor, and I really didn't get the sense that he believed me. And I just kind of tucked this away, but it was really profound because at that time in my life, there was nothing I was going to do with that dream that was going to really impact lives, but it stuck with me, and that dream has never left me. And I left out some of the details, and you can read about that.
Sure.
The readers can read about that in the book. But I knew that God wanted me to do something with that dream. And as I started going down to Orlando and I started teaching, I never in my life ever wanted to write a book. When I would sit there and I would teach, stories automatically just started forming in my mind about my life. And I could not get rid of them in my mind. Augusta, the first chapter of my book, was in my head for 20 years. And I never wrote down one note for the book. The whole book was filed in my head. All 19 chapters were filed away. When I finally decided to write the book, I just went down each, and I knew what they were. I had them by name. I said, Augusta, closet door. I just went boom, 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 listed them all out, and then started writing. And I didn't write it in order. I started with chapter 17, and then I went to chapter 1, and it just bounced around because that's the way God had filed them in my mind. It wasn't, this book is to glorify God. It's not to glorify me. And that's what I tell when I speak now and I stand up in front of people. I say, I'm so thankful that I didn't win the U.S. Open, that I didn't win the Masters. And people are looking at me like, what? Because my dream was to be a PGA Tour player. But if I had won the Masters, I would have stood up in front of the world. I would have put the green jacket on, and I would have taken the credit. I would have thanked my swing coach. I would have thanked my family. I never would have thanked God. I have to give God the glory for this book because this is not what I wanted to do with my life. I did not want to go into this direction, and it has been a leap of faith. It's been, when I first started writing, I said, people are going to think I'm crazy. But it's been really, for the first time in my life, I actually feel like I'm living.
Do you know, Jon, what's interesting about that part of the story that sort of resonates to me, and I don't know whether, this is why I'm going to ask you this, at the time or when you came out of that dream, was there a part of you that thought, wow, did I just have a near-death experience? Because a lot of people might draw that from the way you describe it in that book, is that, especially when you said that, you felt that your spirit left your body and then re-entered it, and of course, when you woke up, you were feeling better. Did you at that time, as a youngster, you were a sophomore in high school, did you feel that, wow, did I die? Because you were sick when you went to sleep. Did you have that sense at that time? Was that something that went through your mind or no?
Yes. Years later, in 2012, I met with my pastor, and I'd tucked this away in my head for 30 years, and I'd only told a few people about it. And he told me, and this is something I didn't mention about my dream, but when Jesus appeared to me in the form of light, I could not see his face. He was audibly talking to me, but I could not see his face. But as I looked down, I could see his body. And he opened his hand. I could see his feet. And when he opened his hands, where the nails were, the light just shone right through it. And that's when I was healed. That's when he healed me, when he opened his hands toward me. But the important thing that I found from talking to my pastor, Pastor Mike Bowie up in Stony Brook United Methodist Church up in Ohio, when I was talking with him, I asked him, I said, did I die? And he said, no, Jon, because you could not see Jesus' face. And he said, when you die, you will be able to see his face, but because you were still alive, you could not see his face. I could see the rest of his body. So, and that's documented in the scriptures. So that's something that I know now. No, I did not die. I was sick. I was extremely sick. But it was an example, because I had always asked myself as a kid, I always said, well, Jesus was everywhere and all these miracles were going on in the Bible, but why has none of this stuff ever happened in my lifetime? And God answered that request probably about 10 years after I asked that in Bible camp. Because I did like all kids. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. Why is this not happening? But I learned that, God is very patient, and he picks his moments in our lives to make his appearance and really make a profound impact on our lives.
I want to, well said. I want to just, something that I found very humorous, but I want you to maybe explain a little bit to the audience here with respect to your pastor, Dr. Michael Bowie. on I think it's page 11, at the very bottom of the picture of the two of you together, you make this statement. You say, "Our first golf lesson, I gave Pastor Mike a dozen golf balls and said, 'These are your 12 disciples, but they do not walk on water.'" Excuse me. What did you mean when you said that statement? And obviously there was a little humor in there as well. But what were the message you were trying to relay to him at that time?
Well, Pastor Mike, I gave him one golf lesson, and unfortunately he went to Dallas, Texas. Literally, he was there about a year and a half. I kind of caught him at the tail end of in the Methodist church. About every 5 or 6 years, they rotate around. And so he was going down, and I kind of wanted to, because he was just impactful in my life, and I was on a bad path. I was not living the life that I knew God wanted for me to live. And so he really got me back into church worship, and so I wanted to thank him. So I invited him to the golf lesson, and we had it was one of those, it was supposed to be an hour, and it turned into an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes, and we talked about all kinds of things. And so after the lesson, I gave him the balls, and he was struggling a little bit, but he had a pretty good swing, and I just wanted to I want, when I teach a lesson, golf is difficult. It's a very difficult game, and I think it's important as a teacher to add a little humor, to make things a little light, make things fun, because when people, you have to put your when a student comes to you, a lot of times they are so intimidated because they look at me and they go, "Well, you only work with tour players and really good players." And I say, "No, I really make my living teaching beginners. I don't make my living teaching tour players, believe me. I mean, the new players and the people coming in the game, what we want." And so I just wanted to make them feel comfortable, and we still laugh about that. And I told some of the other people in the pastoral staff, and they all laughed, and I just thought that was kind of a funny moment in the book.
And exactly why I wanted to share that. Now, what I'd like for you to do, Jon, is a couple of things tonight. I'd like you to maybe share. I mean, obviously, we don't want to give too much of the book away and some of the stories, because we want, obviously, people to go out there and purchase a copy. But maybe you could share just a little bit of some of the stories that you're sharing in the book. Maybe you could take from one of the chapters. And why don't we start with chapter 1, Augusta. What was your thought process in this chapter? What were you trying to convey to the readers here?
The thing that I want the readers to understand is God has a plan for your life. My plan was to be born in Augusta, Georgia. And I could not think, for someone that's going into the golf business and being a golfer, there's not another place in the world. If God had pulled me up before I was ever born and said, "Jon, where do you want to be born?" I'd say Augusta, Georgia. And so I only lived in Augusta 2 months. And this is I'm 50 now. 2 months out of my life. My parents were there 4 months. My father was in the military, and I was born at Fort Gordon. For 4 months of their life, and they're now both in their 70s, for 4 months of their life, they lived in Augusta, Georgia. God specifically chose that point for them to, for my mother to have, for me to be born in Augusta. And so that's one of the things I want the readers to get out of that. Also, my love for Augusta, is my alpha. That is where my life began. And when God spoke to me and said, "I am the Alpha, I am the Omega," He specifically is, there is a beginning and He has an end to my life. He has my life mapped out, and it's up to me to trust Him in that. And so I wanted to lay that kind of a foundation down. The book, even though it's got wonderful golf stories in it, I wanted it to have the feel of, when you read it, that it's laid out very similar to the way the Bible would be laid out. I'm not comparing it to that, but I'm just saying that's the feel that I wanted the reader to have.
Something else, too, and you mentioned this in an email recently, and I wanted to make a point of bringing this up. The editor on this, of course, was Pete McDaniel. And for those of you that are listening that don't know Pete McDaniel, of course, again, he was the editor on your book. Pete co-authored the late Earl Woods best-selling book, Training a Tiger, as well as Tiger Woods' bestseller, How I Play Golf. And he was also the author of Uneven Lies, the heroic story of African Americans in golf. And I want to specifically mention for a couple of reasons. Number one, I had him on the show here a few years ago to talk about Uneven Lies. And we had a great conversation, and certainly respect Mr. McDaniel very much for all that he has given to the game. And, of course, he was a senior writer for Golf Digest. Tell us the story here, how you and Pete sort of met and how he helped on this book. What was sort of the transition there?
Well, Pete, I actually wrote about this in the book. It's in Chapter 18. It's called, it's part of, Chapter 18 has 11 short stories, and it's called Never Forget a Name. And I was working in Orlando in the pro shop. I was in my early 30s, and I was just cutting my teeth into teaching, and Pete walked through the door and said, "Excuse me, sir." He said, "Can you tell me where the restroom is?" And I said, "Well, it's down the hall on your right." And he looked at my name tag. I was wearing my name tag, and he goes, "Jon Decker." And it just had Jon Decker. It didn't have anything else. He goes, "I know that name." And he goes, I may forget a face, but I never forget a name. And he walked to the restroom, and I thought he was crazy. I said, this guy's he's just trying to butter me up or whatever. And so he walked back in a few minutes later, and he goes, "Did you go to Charles D. Owen High School?" And I was like, "Yes." And now, keep in mind, I'm in Orlando, Florida. Charles D. Owen High School is in western North Carolina, where I grew up. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe that he knew where I went to high school. And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, my name's Pete McDaniel, and I used to be the sports editor for the Hendersonville newspaper." And he goes, "I remember covering you in basketball and golf." And we started talking like we had known each other for 20 years, and I started giving him lessons, and then he started filling me in. You know, this was when Tiger was the number one player in the world, and so he was, covering. I mean, he and Tiger were really good friends, and he was traveling with him and doing all the and so I got a lot of inside little stories and stuff, and I would always ask questions and stuff, but Pete is someone, God again chose Pete McDaniel to help me, because I never could have done this without Pete McDaniel. And Pete has just been such a wonderful, we had a business relationship, but it's been more than that. He's been a friend and a brother, and I love him, and I don't know how I could have done it without him. I'm just so blessed and thankful that he came into my life and has helped me through this process. And he's someone that I'll, always consider a friend. And if I ever write another book, he'll be the first.
Now, he was great. I enjoyed having him on the show, and I agree wholeheartedly. It was an honor and pleasure to share that time with him. Let me ask you, obviously, as a teacher professional, and as I mentioned in the opening comments, that you did play some on some of the mini tours.
Sure.
What, if anything, did you draw from those experiences when you were writing this book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game? What, through your own personal experience in golf, helped you to put forth this book?
Well, the one characteristic that I have is persistence. I mean, if anybody that knows me, they know that I'm a very persistent person, and when I put my mind to something, I do it. I mean, it took me 4 years to write this book, and I spent literally every day of 4 years of doing it. So one of the qualities that I got from playing on the mini tours is the persistence and of playing. I remember I wasn't an all-star player. I think the best professional finish I had on the mini tours was a third-place finish, and it was on the Moonlight Tour. And I paid $80 or something. I think it was $80 to play in that. And I got out there, and I played as hard as I could and everything. And I had a 2-shot penalty. I shot a 71 with a 2-shot penalty and came in third place. And I got a check for $85. So when it was all said and done, I'd made $5. And I just remember thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way to make a living, because I'm just not cutting it from that standpoint. And I knew it. But I didn't give up, and the reason I didn't give up playing for all those years on the mini tours there in Florida is I wanted to have the perspective of that, so that if I worked with a tour player, I could relate to them, and that was the biggest reason why I kept at it. I did it more for the experience, so that I could help the student and the college player that wants to turn pro, and the mini tour player who's there, or the tour player. I wanted to have that kind of experience, to know what they're going through, because the average person who stands in the gallery and watches a tour player hit the shot, they have no idea of the emotions that are going on. And those guys look so calm, but they're not. I mean, what they're feeling inside is a roller coaster of emotions. And so I wanted to try to experience that as much as I could, because I knew it would make me a better teacher. I knew after a few tournaments that this was not the path that God wanted for me. but I wanted to stay on it as long as I could. And believe me, I didn't make enough money if I tell people if I had to live on the earnings I made, I'd be living under a bridge or somewhere, because I wouldn't have had, it wasn't the path God wanted. And so teaching is something that I really enjoyed, and having that experience, I think, has really helped me as a teacher, but also in writing the book and not giving up, because there was many, many times when I would be in my office late at night, still typing away after teaching all day. I hadn't gone home. It's 10 o'clock, and I'm asking myself, why am I doing this? And I just say to myself, just keep at it. You're not giving up now. You've come this far, and so I'm real proud of that.
Well, it's certainly very well written, for sure, and there's obviously a lot of things that you wanted to talk about in this book, and what I'd like to do now, if you wouldn't mind, is just, and again, obviously I don't want you to get into the whole story, but I'm going to just read out some names, and I
Sure.
would like it, if you wouldn't mind, just to share why you included them in the book, and if you want to share a little bit of the story, that's fine. Wild Bill kind of caught my interest. Who is Wild Bill? Tell us first off who that individual that you're referring to, and maybe just a little snippet of the story.
He is Coach Bill Burrows is my high school basketball coach, and he coached Brad Johnson and Brad Daugherty. Brad Daugherty was the number one pick in the 1986 draft. And Wild Bill, he got that name as the assistant coach for Georgia Tech under Bobby Crimmins. And the three most influential people in my life have been my father, influential men, because I do want to include my mother in there. But as far
Sure.
as men go, is my father, Phil Rogers, and Coach Bill Burrows. And he pushed me to limits I never thought I could take as a high school basketball player. And I thank him every day because he instilled work ethic in me. And so that's Wild Bill.
Very interesting. Seve Ballesteros.
I got to spend 3 days with Seve Ballesteros and watch him take lessons. And I watched him on the video system at Grand Cypress, and he hit balls in penny loafer shoes. And he was hitting drivers. One drive would go 300 yards right, and the next drive would go 300 yards left. And I thought to myself, my gosh, how could this guy win a mini tour event, much less the Masters and the British Open? And then I saw his short game, and I saw his putting, and I said, okay, I can see why. He had the most beautiful putting stroke I've ever seen. And
Right.
This is what I would tell Adam Scott, and I would tell Sergio Garcia. Putting is an art form. It's not a science. Mm-hmm. It's an art form. And you watch Seve putt. He wasn't thinking about his stroke. He wasn't thinking about mechanics. He wasn't stiff. There's a flow to it. And every single person who has ever played on the PGA Tour at some point in their life has been able to putt. And so what you have to do is you have to draw upon back when you were a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old or 16-year-old. You looked at the hole, you saw the break, you saw the creativity of the putt, and then there was a flow to it. And when I look at Adam Scott and Sergio swing the club, I see that. When they putt, I don't see that. And that's so frustrating as a teacher. I've never worked with them or anything, but if I ever did work with them, that'd be the first thing I'd say to them is get away from you don't need the claw grips, and you don't need the long putters, and you don't need any of that stuff. Learn to let the weight of the putter swing like Seve did, and you'll be a great putter. And I would pull out his video and watch him putt because it was beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and he was obviously also well known for his bunker play. He was a phenomenal bunker player. Just had a great style and finesse in around the greens, particularly the greenside bunkers. And it's a shame, unfortunately, he's no longer with us because he was somebody I really used to enjoy. Obviously, we're a few years apart. I'm just a little bit older than you, but we grew up pretty much the same area. I'm going to be 53 in a little over a week. And I grew up, of course, watching great players like Jack Nicklaus and Seve, of course, and the Lee Trevinos and many other of that era. And they were just masters at what they did. They were incredible shot makers. What's always kind of funny, as I've talked about on the show before, you see a lot of these great young guns coming up, and they've just got these picture-perfect swings. And you compare them to many of the other golfers, from 20, 30 years ago, who by today's standards would not, just as you pointed out with Seve, hitting it left and right and so forth, you be surprised at how they could even make it on the mini tour, let alone on the grand stage on a PGA Tour event or like in a Masters. But were masters of their own game, and they didn't have all of the swing coaches and the golf gurus and the mental gurus that you see out in the PGA and the LPGA tours now. And it just kind of makes you wonder, why is there such a difference? And I just think it really is a testament to the character of these individuals, and maybe something that some of the younger players could take note of. I want to ask you about another player, Paul Azinger. You write about him in the book. What's your experience with Paul, and why is he in the book?
Well, I was teaching a golf school with Phil Rogers, and I taught a lot with Phil Rogers when I was at Grand Cypress. And Paul Azinger was in town. Phil was giving him lessons outside of the school that I was doing in. And Paul just comes driving up to the class. And here, keep in mind, I'm with about 6 or 8 guys from New York City who are probably all mid to high handicap players. And Paul gets out of the cart and says, "Phil, I want to thank you for your help the last couple of days. I'm heading out of town." And Phil says, "Well, before you leave, I want to see you hit some shots." And we were on one of the practice holes. We weren't even on the driving range. And it got real quiet because all the students were just they didn't know what to do. And Paul said, he was very polite, and he said, "Well, I don't want to take your students' time away." And one of the students just said, he said, "Are you kidding? We all suck." And I just started laughing, and the whole group started laughing. He goes, "We want to watch you hit the ball." And so he started hitting the ball. And the thing about Azinger is he has a strong grip, and he's kind of known for that. But his ball flight, he just had a beautiful ball flight every shot he hit. And what I loved about the way Phil taught him was he taught him how to release the club with a strong grip, and he kept saying knuckles to the sky. So that's the way a David Duval,
right.
Guys like a Ted Tree, but guys who have strong grips, they want to cut the ball. They do not want the ball drawing with a strong grip, and so they learn to cut the ball it's not holding on, by releasing with their knuckles going to the sky. And I'll always remember that, because what I loved about working with Phil Rogers was he would take what great players do and he would make them better. He would not try to change things. He would not try to change the mannerisms that got him great. He would find little things in there to fix and make them even better. And that's just the mark of a genius, really. And I learned so much. I could write a whole book on just him and all the things that I learned in my 20 years at Grand Cypress from Phil Rogers.
Yeah, it's and again, drawing from a lot of your experiences helped you, and obviously, and we're going to talk more about this here in just a minute. But your spiritual side. One of the interesting things I found about your book so far, and as I said, I'm not quite done yet, but one of the interesting found is the fact that you're very open about your spirituality. Here you have an opportunity as a golf professional and somebody that's been in the golf industry for many years just to come out with another golf book. You chose to a different approach, and you explained earlier your reasonings behind that. But maybe if you can just share a little bit more why you felt it was important to you to come out with a book as opposed to just another lesson book or another book, how to play great golf or so forth. Why did you feel it was important to come out with the book that you did?
It was important because this is what God was asking me to do. Originally, when I wanted to start the book, it was going to be Golf is My Life. And I knew that 20 years ago. When I knew that God wanted, these stories were coming in my head, and I said, I want to, I kept saying, someday I'm going to give back to the game of golf. Golf has been so good to me, and I want to show how golf and life are parallel. When you go play golf, you treat people with respect. In basketball, you're trying to steal the ball or block a shot, or you're tackling. In football, you're in golf, you're helping your opponent. I wanted to really do a book along those lines. I really threw out the idea of doing an instructional book because, quite frankly, instructional books on the golf swing, in my opinion, you can't learn the game of golf by just reading a book. Now, some people have, but it is something that you must do. It is something that you must tangibly do. And I think it's great if you're talking about more of the mental side maybe, or you're talking about course management, things along those lines. That's great. And I knew that if I wrote a golf instructional book, I would be rewriting the things that have already been written. There would be nothing original about it. When I rededicated my life to Jesus, and when I started going back to church, and I'd been away from the church a long time, and I'd gone down some path by myself with at the time, where I just was hell-bent on, I'm going to make things happen, and I'm going to conquer the world. I'm going to do all these things. And I started, pride, and it was me, me, me. When I got off of that, and I got back, and when God started stripping me down, and when I lost my marriage, and when I lost my house, and when I lost my condo, and then I lost my job, when he stripped me down and got me down to where it was just me and him, I had no choice but to look up to God. And I knew during this process that I had to write glorifying God through the game. And I wanted the glory for the book to go to God. And God will do with this book what he wants. And that's what Pete has told me since day one. If God wants 3 people to have this book and it's going to change their lives, then that's what will happen. Or if he wants 30 million people to. And so I've stuck with that, and I've enjoyed all the people I've met. And it's been a really more of a therapeutic for me. It's been very therapeutic to be able to express myself in what I've been going through in my life. And then what I really think is unique about the book is I've got stories about Seve Ballesteros, Tiger Woods, Arnold Palmer, Brad Johnson, Brad Daugherty, Roy Williams, Bobby Crimmins. I mean, I've got a list of just really star-studded people that add so much sizzle. So the athlete, the football player, the basketball player is going to read this book, and they're going to get something out of it. The golfer is going to get something out of it. And a Christian who's never played the game is going to get something out of it. And that's really what I wanted. And when Christian Faith Publishing, they looked at my stuff and they said, you know what, you got a home run here, because you've got platforms. Most people come to us with just a Christian book, or some people come to us, maybe with 2 elements. She goes, you have so many elements and platforms where you can speak in front of people, and you're really going to impact a lot of lives with it. And that's when I started getting excited about it. And, so it's been a great experience.
Well, the interesting thing too, which I think a lot of people don't really understand, and I think what makes golf a very unique game or sport, however you want to paraphrase, is it very closely mimics life. Many of the challenges that we face out, and I'm sure you've heard this before many times and experienced it yourself, but many of the challenges that we face out in the golf course really parallel many of the challenges that we face in our everyday life. We get deal with adversities and challenges and difficult situations, and have to rely on our inner self, if you will, to get us out of those situations. And life is the same thing. The difference is, I think, that what people don't understand, and I think what you've learned through your own journey in life, is that there is somebody other than yourself that you can rely on. And this is something that you've tried to really articulate in this book, is that there is something else out there other than yourself. And as you pointed out earlier, you've had your struggles and challenges early on in your life that have brought you to this point, as many of us have. I think this is what really the book says, is it's not just about me. It's about something greater than myself. Correct?
That's right. That's exactly right. It is written to glorify God. And I remember, I'll never forget when David Robinson won the NBA with San Antonio. I think it was their first time they had won. I can't remember if he won 1 or 2, but I remember him. They were interviewing him, and the announcer put the microphone right up in his face, and he said, well, you know what I'm going to say? He goes, I give all the glory to Jesus Christ. And I remember, honestly, I'm going to be completely honest with you, because this was a time in my life I wasn't going to church. I kind of cringed a little bit. I said, I don't know if he really should have said that. I totally now get it. I totally get it now. Because when you are living a life and it's just, you're looking at your accomplishments, and in the Bible they talk about, creating an idol. the Israelites, burned down gold and they built a calf. I remember when I first heard that, I thought to myself, I'll never do that. I will never, create an idol. Well, you know what? I did create an idol with my house. And people do it with cars, and they do it with jewelry, and they do it with
money.
their job, and they do it with their money, and they do it with their planes, and all these things. Sometimes they do it with drugs. They do it with whatever it is. They create an idol, and they worship that. And I look back at my life as I was on this spiral going down, and I said, wow, I did do those things that I never said I would do, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. So this book is pretty much a lot of the tough lessons that we all learn in life. And I think all of us, if we sat down, could write a book, because we've all dealt with these same struggles that I've dealt with, and some people have dealt with a lot more than I've dealt with. And so it's important to be able to look at them and learn from them and then move forward. And that's what I tell kids now. I always tell them, I said, if I had learned this concept when I played competitive golf, I would have been a lot better player. And that is the most important shot. I always ask kids, what's the most important shot of your golf, or the most important shot in golf? And some people will raise their hands and they'll say, well, it's the drive. And some people will say, oh, it's the putt. And I say, well, those are important, but the most important shot in golf is the next shot. That's the most important shot. It's not. It's because the shot you just hit is history. So yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. You can't be thinking about the 14th hole when you're on the 12th hole, and you can't be thinking about the 8th hole. You got to be thinking about the hole that you're on. So yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, today is a gift from God. That's why we call it the present. And so that's what I look at now. I try to live every day now, one day at a time. My mom or dad will ask me, what are you going to do next? I'm just going to get through today. I'm focused on today. I've got some things I'll be, travel and speeches and things like that. But I'm trying to put my focus on each day one at a time. And if people will do that in golf, they'll play better. I don't care what their handicap is, they'll play better golf.
Yeah, and I think too, the other thing that a lot of people don't understand, and you pointed out eloquently, is their focus is on not and besides themselves, but it's not just their own satisfaction, but they idolize other things. And when you do that, you take your true self and sort of manipulate it into something other than who you are and who you were meant to be. And a lot of times you see this time and time again. I mean, how many times do you just turn on the TV every day and there's story after story about somebody, that was a rising star in whatever field, doesn't matter whether sports or entertainment, and suddenly now they're, in a drug rehab, or they've lost everything because of another reason, and it's because they're worshiping something other than our Creator. And a lot of people don't understand that. And as I said, until you've truthfully been humbled yourself, you don't get it. I can remember when I was young and for lack of better words, cocky and arrogant and that. And society has sort of gotten us to a point early on in life where you need to think about certain things. And not to say that some of those things aren't important, but they have to be put in perspective. And I think what you've tried to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, with this book is to not to say that you shouldn't go out there and enjoy life and have fun and make the most of your life, but you need to make sure that it's really what your purpose is in life and not just what you, for instance, I'll give you an example just to adhere to that, is you talk about really your dream for yourself was you wanted to play professional golf, but that's not necessarily what the true dream was. And you came to realize that at a later point. And now you have an understanding of what your true path was. And that's really what you try to articulate in this book.
Exactly. I think that God, the one thing that I know about every human being is if you have a heartbeat and you have a breath, you have a purpose. God has a purpose for every single human being on this earth. And the sooner you can tap into asking Him to lead you to that purpose instead of trying to go out there and create it yourself, the less headaches you're going to have in your life. And that's what I've learned in my 50 years. And hopefully I'll have a long, full life, and I will allow Him to lead me more and more, because I still, believe me, I mean, I want to go every day. I want to get up and charge through life. And And I have learned, I mean, in everything I do now is to ask the Holy Spirit to lead my heart, to lead my mind, to lead my soul. And the Holy Spirit is God Almighty living inside of me. And I just tap into that every day, and I just say, lead me through this. You know, what is it today that I need to do that's important? And I ask the Holy Spirit to help me to figure out what's important in my life and what could be put off till tomorrow. Because we could all sit down and write down 25 or 30 things every day that we need to do, but it's hard to do all those in 24 hours. And so I hope that the reader, the one thing that I want to emphasize to all, and I realize that your listeners, the majority of your listeners are going to be golfers or have association with golf, but the book is not just a golf book. It is a Christian book, and golfers, if you're a Christian and a golfer, it's a home run. I mean, it's an absolute home run. And so, and I think you would agree with that, having read most of it. But you know, it's just something that you know, I really I've tried to put an emphasis on, is that you don't have to be a golfer. And I'm hoping that the non-golfer who reads it is going to want to say, you know what, I want to play golf. I want to play golf. I think, you know, something that sounds like a sport that I would like to play, because golf is struggling. I mean, there's a lot of, it's tough, especially with the young kids coming up, and they just got their cell phones and all these things going on, and they're just being pulled in a million different directions. Golf is you know, I want to give back, and I want to grow the game of golf as well.
Well said. And you're exactly right. And, you know, golf can be very humbling in itself. I mean, you look at a player like Tiger Woods, who was at the top of his game until at one point in his life when he went down a path that obviously God had to humble him in many ways. But, you know, and look at the struggles and challenges that he's had on his way back up, and still continues in many ways to struggle today. But I think that even the best player in the world at that particular time can have challenges thrown at him for whatever reason, and fall from grace, if you will. And I'm sure there were many a days and many a nights that Tiger probably thought to himself, what just happened with my life? You know, here I was, you know, winning majors and winning tournaments, and now I can't even put, you know, 2 good rounds together. And many times we've seen over the years him trying to reinvent himself, but obviously God has a different plan for him.
Yeah, I've said this, and I told Pete this. I said, you know, Earl Woods didn't create Tiger Woods, and Sean Foley didn't do it, and Butch Harmon didn't do it, and Hank Haney didn't do it. They all helped. God created Tiger Woods. God is I mean, Tiger Woods. When he was, God said, I'm going to create, you know, the one of the greatest golfers of all time. He did the same thing with Jack Nicklaus. The difference is Jack Nicklaus didn't change his. When you have a winning formula, there's a reason why the New England Patriots consistently win. They have a winning formula. They don't change that winning formula. Jack Nicklaus had a winning formula. He didn't have to deal with injuries. You know why? Because his body, the way he swung the club, he used his body. He didn't restrict too much with his lower body like Tiger. He didn't do a lot of crazy, you know, fighting, you know, going and doing a bunch of crazy stuff outside of golf to put a lot of stress on his body. And he didn't over-practice. I mean, I heard Jack Nicklaus say this in an interview. He said, I'd go to the driving range and I'd hit golf balls. And if I was hitting my wedges good, I'd go to my mid-irons or go to my short irons. If I was hitting those well, I'd go to my mid-irons. And if I was hitting those well, I'd go to my long irons. And if I was hitting those well, I'd go to my fairway woods, and I'd work my way. And then he goes, if I was doing that well, he goes, I'd just go to the short game. And if I was, he goes, he would always go, and if he was doing something well, he would move to work, and he would find what he wasn't doing well, and then he'd work on that. And I think that you can overdo with. I'm not saying, you know, Ben Hogan practice and all that stuff, and Tiger was set the bar very high with it. But I think there comes a point when you can overdo things, and unfortunately, you know, I think that I would love to see Tiger get back to the old Tiger that we once saw, And I believe that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen through God. That's my personal opinion. There's not a swing teacher in this world that's going to make the difference. It's got to be, he's got to come, and only he can do that. And I pray that he does. I think it'd be great for him, and obviously it'd be great for the game of golf as well.
Right. I agree exactly. You can go in front of all the instruction you want. I mean, Tiger knows how to play the game. It's not an issue of how to play or how to swing the golf club. He understands that he's a master at it, really. I'm sure there's a lot of things. In fact, I've even heard some of the coaches in that before say that, Tiger could probably teach them just as much about the swing as they're teaching him. In fact, I think that was Hank Haney that said that. So, it's not an issue of him not understanding the swing or getting into the right position. There's something else, and only God knows what that is. And that's between him and God. And I hope, as you said, I hope one day that he is able to come to terms with that. And if it's in God's will, then he'll continue on. And if not, then God will put him in another place that he wants him to. John, it's thus far it's been a very interesting read, and hearing the stories now, and I'm very honored to have you on the show tonight, because I think again, I try to expand my audience's learning as well. I try not to just get on and I don't know if you listened to the earlier segment or not, but in Coach's Corner we have some great discussions on here, and I don't want it just to be about how to fix the slice or how to correct the hook or what have you. I try to expand their minds a little bit more as well about golf and the teachers' minds as well. But I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I want to give you an opportunity to share with the audience where they can get a copy of this book, and then I want you to share what's next for Jon Decker.
Well, thank you, Ted, for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure. You can there's different ways. It's online. It's on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. But I would tell the listeners to go to my website. It's jondeckergolf.com, and I spell it Jon, so it's jondeckergolf.com, and you can order it through Barnes & Noble or Amazon. There's links on there as well. But I've got golf videos on there as well. I'm going to be going to Orlando next. I'm going to be down during the week of Bay Hill. I'm going to be speaking at the Gathering of the Men at the First Presbyterian Church the next day, which is the 15th of this month. I'll be doing a book signing at Barnes & Noble, and then I'm going to be just doing more book signings and traveling during that time. So, I've got a lot going on as far as my travel goes. I've been in Atlanta. I've been all through Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, in Texas. So I've been doing a lot of traveling, and I've got a schedule up on the website as well. If people, and if someone, like I've already started booking out in the summer in Richmond, Virginia, and some other venues. If anyone is interested in having me come speak, feel free to contact me. And my information's on, through the website. You can contact me
through the website.
And yes, that'd be, I would be welcome. I would love to come and speak and do book signings or whatever they may have. And I've been doing churches and schools, and so it's been a great experience.
Well, again, John, I want to thank you for coming on and being my very special guest tonight. As I said, I've been enjoying the book thus far, and I'm going to try and get it completed this weekend. Obviously, doing this line of work, I get a lot of different things sent to me in books, so it's not always easy to. But this one really, for lack of a better word, spoke to me just because of really what's in this book. And I particularly wanted to get you on the show and share that with my audience. And so, for those of you that would like to get a copy for yourself, you can go to jondeckergolf.com and purchase it through the site. And you can also find out about John's upcoming schedule if he's going to be in your area and you want to go to one of the book signings or maybe one of the events that he's going to be speaking at. I would strongly suggest that you do so. John, please keep me updated on what's happening, and I hope that when book number 2 comes out that you'll think of me and come back and share again with my audience.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ted. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. My very special guest, Jon Decker, and the book is Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. Good luck, my friend. God bless, and thank you again for sharing with my audience.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. All right, that was my very special guest, Jon Decker, the author of Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. A very good book. As I said, I haven't finished it all yet, but I plan on getting through the rest of it this weekend. Some great stories in there. He shared a few snippets from the book earlier on. And again, you can go to jondeckergolf.com. You can order it through his website, or Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com as well. The book is available there. And very, very interesting read, and gives really a lot to think about. I also want to, again, thank my very special Coaches Corner panel, Alison Curdt, Pete Buchanan, and Monte Scheinblum, for doing a great job on the first Coaches Corner panel discussion here in 2017. We'll have another great panel discussion next week on the show. There will not be a show on the following Thursday. Next Thursday, which I believe is the 9th, if I'm not mistaken, we'll be having a show, but the following Thursday, I believe, or maybe it's the one after that, I'll have to double check, but one of the third Thursday, I think, of the month, we won't be having a show. But next week, my good friend, a sports instructor, physical instructor, Brett Cohen, who's been on the show before, is going to be joining in on the Coaches Corner panel next week. And every other month throughout the rest of the year, he'll be coming on and talking about the fitness side of golf and how to better prepare. We've got some great – so he's going to be joining in as a sort of special guest on the Coaches Corner panel. And I've got some other great folks lined up as well, doing something a little bit different this year with Coaches Corner. As I mentioned to Jon on the show here just a few moments ago, I'm trying to get away from just the traditional coach and instruction on the show. We're trying to really open and expand the discussion. I think the coaches have enjoyed it in the past, so we're going to try and change things up a little bit differently this year. So I'm going to have some special guests, not every show, but on a few of the Coaches Corner panel, maybe a couple of them each month. And Brett Cohen, as I said, stepped up on the fitness side of things, and I've got a few others in the wings as well. They're going to be joining in the panel discussion with a specific topic in mind, and I'm going to let them actually do a little bit of the talking and sort of opening the dialogue and discussion on those shows. So make sure you tune in for those as well. But again, I want to take this opportunity to thank my very special guest this evening, Jon Decker, the Coaches Corner panel, Monte Scheinblum, Pete Buchanan, and Alison Curdt, for always doing a great job and giving of your time. And but I want to thank, particularly, the audience for faithfully tuning in, the global audience for faithfully tuning in to Golf Talk Live each and every week. And as I've said so many, many times over the last several years, I have a great amount of pleasure and enjoyment of having a number of highly talented coaches, teacher professionals, authors like Jon Decker, and golf entrepreneurs that stop by. And it's really through their participation and guest appearances that have helped make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. Special thanks to some of the sponsors and supporters of the program, Mr. Jonathan Laird, my good friend at South Coast Golf Guide. Go to southcoastgolfguide.com. You can find out more about this great publication that's here throughout the southeastern part of the United States, from Texas right over through here in Florida. If you're looking to play some of the great courses here in the Southeast, you can get a copy of South Coast Golf Guide anywhere here in the Southeast. Or if you're not in the Southeast and you'd like to have a copy of the guide before you come down here on vacation, you can reach out to Jonathan at southcoastgolfguide.com, and he'll make arrangements to have a copy sent up to you. But otherwise, when you're coming down here in the Southeast, if you're going to be at most of the main courses in the areas throughout the various states, or you can go to Edwin Watts and some of the other golf shops that might be carrying them as well. But go to southcoastgolfguide.com, and that'll tell you where you need to go to get your hot little hands on a copy. So, again, southcoastgolfguide.com. Thank you, Mr. Jonathan Laird, for all your continued support of the show. Also, Meredith Kirk from Meredith Kirk Golf, thank you for all of your support. Nikki and Tiffany Litherland, thank you for your support. Mr. Bernie Pinder from Ontic Golf as well, great custom line of customized putters. Thank you, for Bernie, for all of your continued support. Sean Kelly, owner of linkedgolfers.com, a great social network platform for those like-minded individuals, both in the golf industry and those that just enjoy playing the game. Go to linkedgolfers.com. And, of course, my very good friend over in Ireland, Doyle Golf Solutions, Mr. Peter Doyle, great teacher professional as well as a club fitter as well. Thank you, Peter, for all of your continued support. Again, thank you for tuning in this week to Golf Talk Live. I thoroughly enjoyed the first show of March and the first Coach's Corner panel, and, of course, my special guest, Jon Decker. On that note, I will see you next week right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody and have a great weekend.